Freddie Davies, a hard-working variety act. Freddie has done television, movies, variety theatre, pantomime, the list goes on. Opportunity knocked for a young comic who stood out with his comedy character with a speech impediment. Talking to Freddie is a masterclass in comedy and performance. And he tells me about his talk on Stagecraft, as well as sharing advice and even a line or two for this ventriloquist, for which I'm very grateful. Freddie is one of those very recognisable faces with or without his hat, and I'm blessed to have worked with him on variety bills over the years. He has always given me time when we meet, and that in this business is something young performers never forget. So welcome to Eyes and Teeth, Season 5, Freddie Parrot Face Davies.
How are you?
I'm very well. The last time I saw you, it was bustling in Blackpool with 3,000 magicians.
That's right, yeah. With for the Magicians Conference, yeah.
Oh, it was brilliant.
I enjoy that, actually.
Do you go every year?
Well, I've been, the past few years, because I'm only over in North Yorkshire, so it's sort of an hour and a half, 2 hours drive for me.
It's not bad.
And I've got a lot of mates over in Blackpool. I think I was with one, Liz Melville, who was an old magician. We started together.
So, can I ask you, Freddie, what was the first moment you discovered comedy, or that you wanted to be in comedy?
I was probably about 6 or 7. My granddad was a musical comic.
Okay.
Called Jack Herbert, and I used to go and see him in Variety in the mid-40s, during and after the war. So, and of course, that's all I ever wanted to do then, you know.
Yes.
It was to do actual comedy, and it never left me. That feeling of wanting to be on the stage. So I used to stand in the wings and watch him.
Oh, did you? Magical moments.
Absolutely magic. And I remember there was always the etiquette backstage that the stage manager always had to be asked. You could never take anybody and stand them in the wings. You always had to say to the stage manager, do you mind if, well, he used to say, if Freddie stands in the wing. But I was only a little kid, you know, and I'd usually stand in front of whoever was running the corner.
Yes.
Which used to be the resident stage manager. I mean, in those days, you didn't get DSMs and ASMs. You know, these touring variety shows would be lucky to have anybody with them helping to run the show.
Yeah, definitely.
Usually a company manager. I mean, they were only, the shows I was looking at in the Salford Dibberton were sort of catchy reviews, you know.
Yes.
That was it. I never really wanted to do anything else.
Wow. I think it's the same these days, Freddie. Stage managers, if you get in their way, you're in the way of their job, aren't you? So they don't want kids running about. But you were one of those kids that was standing there actually watching what was going on and taking it all in.
Absolutely. It was absolutely marvellous, Marvellous. As I say, so that was the first moment. I mean, the first time I ever stood not on a stage, well, I suppose it was a kind of a stage, I was put on a chair when I was 10 years of age.
Okay.
I was taken back to London in 1947, which is 10 years after I was born. I was 10 years of age. And it was only 2 years after the war had ended. I had an auntie who had a pub in Walthamstow called the Crooked Billet. Of course, and I was the cute little kid, and I was put on a chair and told to tell jokes, and I did my granddad's act, of course.
It sounds like the beginning of a movie. I love that.
Yeah, and that's really how it all started. As I say, I never wanted to go to acting school. I never wanted to be an actor. I mean, I did acting. I did it amateur dramatics. You do it.
Okay, yeah.
I did amateur dramatics and everything. But I only ever really wanted to do, well, in those days, it was called front cloth comedy. There was no such a thing as stand-up.
Yes, yeah. Like Max Miller, that type of comic. That.
Yeah, it was. They were sort of musical variety comics. See, variety came in after music hall because after the First World War, when the soldiers came back from the trenches, they sort of demanded a little more sophistication, and then variety came in because that was the only place of entertainment. It's like everybody having a TV at home now. Everybody went out to the theatre. Everybody went out to the music hall and saw a show because it cheered them up.
Yeah,
To be cheered up.
They do.
There would be more people go to the theatre nowadays if it wasn't for television, of course.
Yeah, we need it more than ever now, don't we? What's going on? People need to get out, go to the theatre. Everyone's watching television now because we're forced to be doing that, But in that situation, Yeah, I suppose things come and go, don't they? It's a fashion, isn't it? Where everyone went to the theatre with the music hall, and then that started to die down. Television came in, and it changes with the times,
It
doesn't
only
it?
died because television came in.
Yeah.
It didn't die down on its own. I mean, when radio started, radio created its own stars.
Yes.
And then after, then the BBC started doing television, from 1946 onwards. But the reason it didn't catch on, and because A, it was very expensive, and B, there wasn't really the content. And it wasn't, they didn't start finding the content until after 1953 when it was the coronation, right? And that was a whole day's content, and they realised that people would watch television if there was something to watch on it. And then in 1956, ITV came in, and that really was the demise,
Right.
of the variety theatre. That was the end of it, and that put the nail in the coffin,
The rock and roll era kicked in and kind of ruined the variety, didn't it? Really, the
rock and roll was nothing to do with the theatre. I mean, although they toured a few theatres, it was to do with records and record production. I mean, they did stage shows because they did stage shows mainly so they could show their acts, right? So they would have a top of the bill, and they put all the Larry Parnes used to put a load of musical acts on, so that they would sell the records.
Yeah, that's true.
And be seen around. Even today, if you want to get on a big tour, you've got to pay to go on it.
Yeah, no, that's true. And we're only put there, if you're going to support an act, we're only put there so there's an interval. So it's all about revenue, isn't it? And keeping them venues open, which makes sense, really, and it gives us a job, so there's no complaining. How did Butlins come about? When did you join Butlins? And
well, I needed a way in, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get in the business. I mean, the business was finishing.
Yeah.
It was 19, whatever it was,
58
when I came out of the army, and I just didn't know how to get into show business. I wanted to get in, even though my granddad had been in it. I mean, it passed him by. It's a bit like trying to get into alternative comedy. It's like getting into anything in show business.
Yeah.
It's the getting in.
It's the doors that you need, the doors that open, or the contacts.
That's right. When you're not in it, you think, Jesus, how do I do it? In 1957, I was in the army in Newcastle, and I went to see Des O'Connor, who was appearing at the local theatre. He was at the Empire in Newcastle.
Wow.
And I collared him at stage door, and I said, I want to be a comic in show business. What do I do? He said, well, do what I did. I said, what was that? He said, go to Butlins and be a red girl. It was his advice. And I went to Butlins and I asked for an audition. And I wrote a letter when I came out of the army, and I got a reply. And I did an interview in Manchester I think it was around about March 1958. And I got a job as a red coat that season with Frank Mansell, and that was my apprenticeship.
Yes.
I did 6 years at Butlins as a red coat.
6, wow.
And I say that was my apprenticeship, you see.
I was on holiday with my parents, and I was a ventriloquist from the age of 12 to 17. When I got to 17, they took me to a holiday in Barry Island, which used to be a Butlins, but then it was a private part when I went. But it still looked like a Butlins, and it was still packed with people. And because I took a puppet with me, I asked the entertainment manager if I could do a spot. So that was my audition, because I really wanted to actually start work properly as an entertainer. And so after my 10 minutes, when I worked to the room, I went down quite well. He offered me a job there and then. And so 2 weeks later, I came back to finish off the summer season that I was on holiday at, 2 weeks previous. So we do need apprenticeships, don't we? I mean, we need to learn the craft before we go out on the road, because it's not easy.
Right.
It's not as easy as just...
And I think, this talk that I do is mainly about, it's called Stagecraft. And the reason I talk about Stagecraft is because there's so many young performers, and then you being one of them, younger performers, who don't really, or never got the chance to work in variety and watch everybody else work.
No, not at all.
And it's only by watching and learning from these people that you really learn anything, because where are you going to learn?
Yeah, and at Butlins, when you're a red coat or blue coat, like I was, I watched the acts that came in, the cabaret acts that you want to be. You watch them and you study them every night, don't you? And that was how we learn, really. So
you actually learn subconsciously.
Yes, of course.
You don't stand there and go, "What am I going to learn from this bloke?" You actually learn subconsciously, because if you're in the bit or interested in the business, then you're interested in what they're doing. You might be interested from a critical point of view, and you look at them critically and think, now you might learn what not to do also.
Yes.
Which is also a lesson learned. You should never work ever, anywhere, ever, and not learn something. When you leave a gig, you should always leave it and say, "What have I learned tonight?"
Yeah, everything should be experienced, yeah.
I've learned not to do that.
Yeah.
You see, what Dodd used to do, he used to analyse everything he did, gags-wise. I don't think he analysed the laughs. He analysed the material he was doing.
Yes.
And he worked in a kind of a flow, a comedy. He had a comedy timing. And it wasn't so much timing, it was a comedy rhythm.
Yeah.
Right? And he was getting into that rhythm.
He treated it like music.
Yeah. To get out of a rhythm.
Of course.
When you're doing comedy. It's very easy to get out of a rhythm. You've got to dictate it.
Yes.
The performer has to dictate the rhythm.
Yeah, you
know it's going to work where and when and how and where it's going to lead you to.
It has to flow, yeah. And if it's in the wrong order, doing the shows, and having that experience actually helps you put it in that right order.
I thought, funny, since we spoke, we had a communication and knew I was going to do this. My head's been ringing with bloody gags for you.
Oh, bless you.
Really
whack them in.
No, I don't know whether you've ever done it or whether, because it might be an obvious thing to do.
Sure.
I must say, because it's ringing in my head, that at some stage Arthur should look at you and say, "Do you realise you're very controlling?"
That's a nice line.
I woke up with it in the middle of the night and I thought, what a good line for a vent. Just for no reason at all, he'd look in and he looks at you straight in the eyes and he said, "Look at me when I'm talking to you."
Yeah. I'm just really flattered that you wake up.
He said, "Look at me." And you look at him and he said, "Why are you so controlling?"
That's really nice. I'll send you the commission. But it's lovely.
Let me know if it works.
I will do. I'll try that if I ever get back to work. But
the other one I thought was, if you said to him, particularly after this lockdown thing, if you said to him, "How did you get on?" And he said, "What with?" And you say, "Coronavirus." And he said, "I'm glad you said that." and you say, "Well, why aren't you wearing a mask?" And he says, "The worst thing I can give you is woodworm."
That's nice.
You must have Ollie. I mean, do you want me to write something?
No, it'd be lovely. I need some new material now. I've been sat here writing nearly every day, and thinking about how do you start a show after the world has stopped.
I think you've got to refer to it, haven't you?
You can't ignore
you
it.
Refer to the fact that he couldn't give you anything.
Yes. Yeah, that's funny.
If he sneezed.
Yeah.
And if he said to him, "Why aren't you wearing a mask?" And he said, "Well, I think you're the one who should wear a mask."
Yeah, I'm just thinking of another one. If the dummy sneezes in my face, then I say to him, "Well, why didn't you turn around when you done that?" And then he could say, "Well, you're the one moving my head." So that's lovely little line, actually, with the sneeze. And
well, yes, I've always simplified material.
Yes, I always make it complicated.
If he says to you, if he sneezes, or in your presence, he wouldn't just sneeze in your face. He wouldn't do that. If you just sneeze
in my direction, yeah.
Yeah, and then you say, "Why don't you turn your head when you do that?" And you look at him and you say, "That's down to you."
Yes. Yeah, that's nice. Oh, bless you, Freddie. It's nice to think that you're waking up in the middle of the night thinking of me as well. That's a very sweet sentiment.
Well, I was awake in the night. I do wake in, and the old man's complains. I get up for a pee and then I can't always get back to sleep again. The controlling gag. I thought that was lovely.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try that. You're always giving. I always remember advice you give me, Freddie. And the thing about having my trunk down on the floor and you said put it up on wheels, you've got a really good eye, haven't you, for not just comedy but visual props and stage etiquette and how to look right.
You see, how it looks
Yes,
from the front. It's all about presentation
definitely.
and how it looks. Because if whatever you do on the stage is noticed, it's seen.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, whether you pick your nose, take your trousers down, whatever, drink a glass of water, whatever you do is seen. And by everybody. They're all looking at you. You're the focus of their attention. I'll give you, for instance, I had an email from a kid, well, a woman now, about 3 days ago, and she said she got to me by a circuitous route, eventually through my website, and she said, I have to tell you this. When I was 5, I came to see you at the end of the pier in Skegness. And for some unknown reason, I shouted out Parrot Face. And you said, who's calling me names? And she said, my dad pushed me out of the row, and I said, come here, little girl. And she came, and I got her on the stage, and I had a chat to her. She said, and you kept smiling the whole time. And at the end, you said to me, she looked off stage, and you said, have we got a present for this little girl? And she said, you gave me a record and a joke book. She said, and I've never, ever forgotten it.
Oh.
And I was 5, which really is the point in question. Whatever you do on the stage, not only is it noticed, it's remembered.
Yes, yeah, that's nice.
People remember live performances because they don't go very much.
No, that's true. No, I've had similar things with kids in the audience with puppets, and I don't ignore them. I get them on the stage and get them to do a few minutes, because somebody done that to me. One of my idols done it to me and got me up, and I know how much it means to you, as a kid, because you do never forget. That's a lovely story, that, Freddie.
It's generally things on stage people don't forget, because to them, going to the theatre or going out, or even going to the club or going out for the night is a special event.
Yes.
They're going out with a gang of friends or people, or when they go to the theatre, whatever they do, it is special to them.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? And that's why you should always focus that attention. Incidentally, do you lift your box up now or not?
I've got it on wheels now. I'm getting something made. I've got boxes on wheels, and they're always on tables now. And I've only really done theatres and cruise ships. And I think about you. I know. I think about you. Every time I set up, I think of you, Freddie, and that's why I don't forget what you told me. And if there's an opportunity where I've not been able to use the table, I go, Freddie's going to kill me, and I don't forget. I really don't. And I really appreciate you giving me that time, So it's brilliant. But yeah,
it was a pleasure, love it. No, but you see, because you're so promising.
Oh, contributional.
How did your comedy character Samuel Tweet come about? Because did that come before Opportunity Knocks, or was that after?
Oh yes. Oh no, it was featured on Opportunity Knocks. How old are you, Steve, now?
I'm 45, still very promising in the business, but I'm 45 now. So.
Of course you are. No, you still look great, which is which is 101% of all you need, really.
Yeah, I know the other percentage is putting the box on a stand. So we'll work that out.
No, it is, because you have to tick certain boxes.
Yes.
Right? And you have to look right and sound right and do the right thing at the right time. That's the 4 positives.
And you had a great look about you, and you had a very distinctive look and a great comedy face with the hat. And
different, Steve, you see.
Yeah.
It was a bit different.
To stand out.
And I think that's what you have to aim for, just to be a little bit different. So it just gives you that sort of stem of originality. However, thin it is, it doesn't have to be much, and it can be the most simplest bloody thing. I mean, it's all been done before. Comics have pulled the hats down over the years, forever. And people have talked with a lisp, Snagglepuss and thing. It was just a combination of the two, and at the time, it just hit.
It was novel,
nation, really.
Yes.
Because it was something a bit different. But the Samuel Tweet character came about because I used to sing a song with a lisp.
Okay.
So when I left Butlins, I used to sing this song, I'm going to sit right down and write myself a letter. And it was a funny way of starting the act. Do you know what I mean? Not without a hat, no hat. Just I'm going to sit right down and write and it would make people just, he looks a bit different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mentioned you to my mum the other day, and she just started doing it over the phone, and I was laughing,
You see, as soon as I left Butlins, I left in September 63, and a year later, 20-odd million people had seen me.
Wow.
It was just as quick as that. I mean, I worked a few clubs I worked a lot of clubs in the winter, and then going into the summer, and I did this terrible summer season in Dunoon, but I walked out after 2 weeks, which was it wasn't summer season, it was me on an open air stage. It was bloody dreadful.
Wow, where's Dunoon? Is that Scotland or?
Dunoon, well, it's in Scotland, it was awful.
Okay.
Frank Mansell, my mentor at Butlins, had got me this season. They wanted a red coat type person to do a sort of an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, getting the kids up.
Yes.
Doing fun and games and that. Anyway, it was a novel idea, but it rained all the time, so nobody came in. And it was open air. It was just bloody awful. You can imagine, terrible.
I can. The gigs that I've been offered next week and beyond for over the next couple of weeks, they're all outside. All the Warners, the Butlins, they're all outside. So you've got a 50-50 chance of actually working when you get to that venue. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so yeah. So that's my Dunoon. My Dunoon is coming up next week.
You're doing some outdoor shows, are you?
Yeah, they're all outside, yeah, because that's the rules at the moment. Yeah. It is good.
Well,
it's
all,
getting back to work.
Down to experience, Steve.
Oh, definitely. I'm looking forward to the new experience.
It's
Yeah.
all down to experience. I had the list, and I was working a club one night. It's in the book, as you know. I was working the club one night. It must have been about February-ish. January, February of 64. And a woman just shouted out, as people do in clubs, heckling, "Tell us a joke about a budgie then." Right, so I had the hat, and there wasn't many people in, and I was sort of ad-libbing, and there was sweet, nice audience, half a dozen tables. And I had their attention, and I put the hat on, and I told an old budgie joke that I knew about birdseed, and it worked. And I never realised that it would
Take off, yeah.
A pal of mine who came with me, and he came with me a couple of weeks later, and I carried on doing it, right, because it was getting big laughs.
Okay.
And a pal of mine said to me, "Do you know the character, the fellow with the hat?" So he said, "He's very good for television, that, And I hadn't looked at it, because we don't practice comics, do they? We just, you got to have an audience to practice.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I look in the mirror, and I thought, yes, that's a good television head. Because that's what television is all about, heads.
That's brilliant.
Talking heads.
It worked.
And that was it. And so when Opportunity Knocks came along, and he came to see me, that's the first thing he said. "I love the character with the hat on. It's 4 minutes long, the gag. Do it tomorrow night on Up Knocks," and it was as quick as that.
Wow. It's brilliant.
The following day, I was virtually out of work. I came from Dunoon. I got a few gigs in because there were people cancelled and what have you. And my agent, Mike Hughes, in Liverpool, he managed to fix me this Friday night in Oldham. And this producer came to see me, and he was doing Knock Knocks the following day from Didsbury, Manchester, ABC television. And he said, "Can you be there at 9 o'clock in the morning?" And there I was. And,
they were good days, weren't they? Variety was still really good back then. And no?
Well, the variety on television was, yes.
Yeah.
But not Opportunity Knocks. The difference between Knock Knocks and the thing that you did, Britain's Got Talent, my God, they stitched Jimmy Tamley up, didn't they?
They did, yeah. You never know how it's going to turn out when you get onto the live shows, because things change, But it's always a danger using the judges, always.
Yes. But I think there's too much of that, too much using it. You see, the difference between Knock Knocks and what happened or what happens on Britain's Got Talent is, I don't think Britain's Got Talent is about the talent. It's about the judges.
Yeah, that's the difference.
It's about the judges. And I mean, I knew even had the doll made for looking like Simon Cowell. And,
yes. Do you know what? Sometimes you have to play him at
with the flow. I totally understand that.
Yeah.
I get that. Don't worry, I get that. But as I say, in Up Knocks, they let you do your act, and they didn't cut away.
Yeah,
finish. A chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, I'm knocking it, but you're one of the few successes to come out of it.
I know, it's
out of Britain's Got Talent, but I bloody hate the show.
Yeah, you take the risk. I saw Doddy, and he said the same thing. He hated that I was on the show, and he asked me why I did it, and I said, where else can I go in variety and comedy?
Right.
What do you do? I'm not a stand-up.
Steve, I get asked every year to go on it.
Yeah, they email me still to go on it, and these are new researchers, and I say, can you take a look at 7 years ago? Have a look at my clip. I've done the final. I'm not allowed to do it again,
and Steve.
You started to get more props in the act. You had the hat, and then you got a parrot made up, didn't you? Was that in Coventry?
Well, it was Peter that made the parrot, of course.
The wonderful Peter Pullon, yeah.
The wonderful Peter. And I think it was probably one of his first props.
Yes.
Because he was then he was just a stagehand at Coventry. But they used to call him the prop man at Coventry. He's a young lad.
Yes.
And if you needed a prop, bring it on or put him behind the tabs, he would set your props for you.
Oh.
Particularly in pantomime.
Yes.
Because I always used to say in pantomime, we need somebody purely on props. And that's how he started. And then we obviously model things and that, you know. And I said, do you think you could make me a huge parrot? Like man height. So when he stands on my shoulder, it will look you. So he made this polystyrene parrot. Do you know what he charged me for it?
No.
£13.
Oh, wow. It's gone up slightly, but he's still a very generous man, Peter.
I know, he's lovely. That was the cost of the materials. He didn't want anything for making it.
Yeah, bless him. You know, he hasn't changed. He's just such a lovely guy. I love working with Peter. He's just delightful. Yes, yeah. It's nice to have people you love to work with in this business, you know, whether it's agents that book you, other acts that you work with on stage, or people that make your props. It's just delightful. And surround yourself with good people. Do you find that you've done that over the years, Freddie? You've surrounded yourself with...
You can only try and do it. There are...
Yeah. You
try and sort them out, you know.
Sure. Takes time.
Peter was... he's just a very nice-natured lad. I had a restaurant years ago in Blackpool called the Duff Budgie Bistro. And he came and he did pictures all around the walls of budgies and parrots.
Wow.
Cartoons. He was a very good cartoonist as well, you know.
Yeah, he sketches my characters before he builds them. So he's a great sketch artist as well. He's so talented.
His work is very good.
Oh, yes.
You know, that's the main thing. His work is very good.
I mean, my next character is from PT now. It's waiting to go ahead now. So yeah, he's just brilliant at what he does. So what happened with your parrot? What sort of gag or routine did you do with the parrot?
Well, it was a prop in as much as it was good for photographs, and I walked on stage with it. I can't remember. I think.
Did you turn its head or something?
The first time I really used it with any kind of effect was with following Johnny Hart.
Okay.
Now, Johnny Hart used to do an act with budgies.
Right.
And at the end of his act, he would produce a macaw, right?
Real birds.
And after that, he would go off and he'd do a still and he'd come back with a big white cat.
Okay.
And I don't know which order he did it in anyway, but he would produce his bloody great macaw. And that was the end of his act and go off. And I used to follow him with this bloody great parrot under a cover.
Oh, so it's really in reference to Johnny's act.
I walked to the mic and whipped the cover off, and they got this bloody great big 6-foot.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It was very funny, and it was a great way to follow him, you know.
Yeah, to make reference to his act. It's very clever. Wow.
Yeah, but so that's really what I used it. Then he made me a vent parrot, which sat on my shoulder.
Okay.
I pulled a string and he turned his head and went. Farted all over me.
Oh, that's funny, isn't it?
Harry Seacombe, when I first met him, he said, "Hey, here's the fella that farts over everybody." Yeah, so that was the props and the comedy props, but I couldn't really. I used to use them for panto and maybe summer season, but I couldn't tour them.
Yeah,
they were too big to tour.
Too big to jump on a train with. Yeah, people see it hanging out your back pocket.
Same with you, king of the props.
The stand-up circuit don't like prop acts, you know, and it's very well known that they don't enjoy a prop act or event act, but that they've been a little bit accepted in the modern day, but it's not the thing, you know. They just like stand-up. They like people telling stories. But Ronnie Corbett said that you had funny bones, which is a lovely quote, isn't it?
Oh, it's fabulous. I was doing a season in Yarmouth, and he was at the Brit, and I was at the Wellington Pier, and they hadn't opened, and he came to see the show, and he said, "Do we have a difference in what's it?" He said, "I'm a comedy actor," he said, "but you've got funny bones," and that's how it came. The phrase came to be used for the film. You see, so
yeah, brilliant. And so what is the difference then between a funny person and funny bones? Can you explain that?
Well, yeah, a I mean, it's always been said that comics or comedians will say jokes that are funny, right?
Yes.
Whereas funny men, as they used to call them, make jokes funny. They are more of a physical presence.
Definitely, like Norman Wisdom or Tommy Cooper, they were physically funny, weren't they?
They had funny bones. You see, they had a very funny persona, which is what at the turn of the century, last century, you used to have funny bones because there was no sound.
Yes.
You couldn't be heard, or unless you were shouting from a stage. But that's why all these visual comedy acts came into being, and most of them went over to America to work in vaudeville, and a lot of them stayed there, like Laurel and Hardy, well, not Laurel and Hardy, but Stan Laurel went over, and Charlie Chaplin, of course, and they were just great physical comics.
Yeah. I mean, they started off in the music hall, didn't they? I mean, Chaplin started as a slapstick, sort of a visual comedy, funny-boned man, and then whatever happened to him.
Funny bones,
yeah.
A lot of them were also eccentric dancers.
Right. Okay.
And eccentric dancing, by nature of its concept, is eccentric, comedic, funny dancing.
Yes.
Rubbery legs and things, but it all came from being an eccentric dancer, which of course people like Billy Dainty and Nat Jackley.
Yes.
Were great exponents of what they call eccentric dancing.
And you worked with a lot of comedians that weren't known as funny bones, but they were just funny people. They told a good joke, like Bob Monkhouse, for instance.
He didn't have funny bones. He was a raconteur.
Yes.
He, as I say, told jokes. He told situations, jokes, comedic situations. He wasn't what they call a funny bones comic.
No.
But he came up on radio and of course television. First intelligent comic that came along.
Okay, right. And like Ken Dodd. I mean, Ken Dodd was a very intelligent comedian.
But Ken Dodd had both. Great visual and great talking comedian as well.
He was great with his body, wasn't he? His arms, his legs. Yeah. Yeah, we miss him. So a lot of comedians you've worked with, Stan Boardman, Jim Bowen, Ken Goodwin's, a lot of the comedians, that were around in the 70s.
Well, we're all around at the same time, we're all the same age now. As I say, we all came up together. The comedians started in 1972. See, I did Up Knocks in 1964.
Okay, wow.
So I was just a little before them.
Yes.
But then the comedians came up, and they really all were stand-up comics.
Yes.
There were very few funny bones comics. They were mainly stand-up comics because that was the object of the show. The comedians was going from gag to gag to gag to gag. It was a gag maker's show.
Yes, yeah. Johnny Hampert was great at making those comedians overnight success, really, wasn't it? A lot of them stood out,
huge.
Didn't they?
It was absolutely huge. Well, it was something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Also, and people always want comedy. Always remember that, Steve. Nothing happens till the comic comes on.
Yeah, laughter's great.
Singer comes on, the dancers, whatever. Nothing happens till the fella comes on and talks to them.
The connection between that person and the audience.
Talks to them.
Yeah.
And I always say that, once you gain your confidence, you see, the problem with today, as opposed to yesterday, is you never were at the same place twice.
Yes.
You're going to do, it's all bloody one-nighters now. It's very hard to work somebody 2 or 3 nights. So you can't, it's very hard to hone anything.
I mean, those 28-week seasons you used to do in the summers, or the 4-month pantomimes. You could hone your act.
That's right.
Yeah, I started off doing it, but now,
every gig you do is the first time.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what I mean, in a different venue. And I think what you have to get into your back of your head somewhere is that they're not against you.
Sure.
Nobody's against you in the audience. They want you to succeed.
Yes, yeah.
Right, so, and if you say that to yourself, well, they're not really against me. They don't dislike me. They've nothing to dislike yet.
You bumped into Max Wall a few times. I read his biography once. He was an interesting man, Mr. Max Wall.
Yes, he was. He was a bit of an enigma, really. He was. I used to meet him when the water rats used to be in the Eccentric Club in St James's.
Yes.
I often used to live behind there somewhere, and I often used to see him walking down the road. And I said to him, "Do you never want to go in the water rats?" No, he said. I'm not a joiner. I don't do joining.
I've heard a few people say that. Like, like Lee Evans, actually, funny enough, he's not a joiner, and Dave Evans wasn't a joiner.
No,
his
he's
father.
a bit of a one-off, Lee, actually.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I've spoken to Lee on a few occasions, and he's never been on social media, never needed to. I mean, you worked with Lee on this brilliant movie, Funny Bones, which I have in my collection. It's also the title of your book as well. And I think it's one of the first times I got to see you work myself. Lee Evans and also Oliver Platt and the variety legend George Carl.
That's right.
He was fantastic.
Was the biggest thrill.
Yes.
To meet George. I mean, sadly, he had the onset of Alzheimer's when
at that time, really. Oh.
It was very sad, and he could do his act because he knew it, right, and it was second nature to him. So he had, I think he had about 3 big old skips full of his props, and they'd say to him, "Do the spoons and do this," and he'd get them out and he'd do them beautifully, But he was such a lovely old man.
Yeah.
We became very, very close on the film because he couldn't understand why this fella was shouting at him and he wasn't near him. Right? The director would be standing behind the camera and he'd say, "Look to the left, George. Look to the right, George." And George just used to look at me. And I'd say, "Look to your left, George." And then Peter would shout out, "Don't tell him what to do." I said, "But he's not taking any notice of you." He doesn't know he's supposed to.
Yeah, he's just doing his act. And
yes.
He's never been told how to do it.
To do.
Yes.
Anyway.
Oh, so funny.
It was wonderful to be. And, the lovely thing is, a year after we made the film, I went over to Las Vegas, and I went to see him, and his son picked me up and took me out to the house, and he said, "Sadly, he won't know you."
Oh, that soon after the film. How sad.
Yes. So he said he won't know you, because he opened the door and George looked at me and he went, "Freddie!"
Oh, wow. What a moment. Like,
he was lovely, old George.
Yeah,
really
it's like just about to go on stage and they tell you, "Oh, they're really bad tonight. You'll go down badly tonight," and you go out there and you have a great night. It's like, it's that sort of feeling, isn't it? But yeah, what feeling that he actually recognised you? Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, absolutely. Well, we did about 10 weeks in Blackpool.
Yeah.
About 6 weeks in Ealing.
Okay.
On the film.
Studios.
And about 3 or 4 weeks before that, I mean, we were never apart. We never did separate scenes. We're always together.
Yeah, because you were brothers in that, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bless him. It was absolutely gorgeous. But it was a wonderful experience to work and to see the way, money talks on a film. I mean, I got that experience with Harry Potter, which was, money was no object, and it was amazing to be part of. But I was telling somebody earlier on a phone call this morning about when I worked on the Harry Potter. At the premiere, I met Alan Rickman for the first time.
Oh, okay. Great actor.
And he said to me, "Freddie, I've got something to tell you." I said, "What's that?" He said, "I started in pantomime at the Rex Winslow, and I was playing King Rat. And I've played the same part ever since."
He's been typecast.
Wonderful lad.
Oh, bless him. And also in this movie, Freddie, you worked with comedy icon from Hollywood, Jerry Lewis. I mean, I watched a lot of Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin TV shows, on DVD. Incredible. What a talent. Funny Bones.
Oh, he was marvellous. And he was very nice. I mean, he was charming to work with. Absolutely charming.
Yeah.
We had lots of chats and, and he was lovely. I mean, he had a reputation for being difficult.
Right.
But it never showed. And all the time he was in Blackpool, never showed. It was just a delight. From the moment I met him, he was fine.
Oh, that's nice.
And people, the reputation preceded him. Everybody was frightened to death, and he was going to, he was going to tell everybody what to do, but he didn't. He was charming. Absolutely not.
I mean, it's such a great title for a movie because yourself, Jerry Lewis, George Carl, Lee Evans, you have all got Funny Bones. It worked so well, didn't it? The movie with that in mind, just brilliant.
It was, it didn't quite do what they wanted. The trouble was, it was 45 minutes too long. And he had to cut 45 minutes out. And he cut an awful lot of the plot out. It was a different type of plot.
Right.
The film was quite different to the one it finished up being.
Yes.
Because of the editing. It was originally about the search for drugs of a certain nature.
Okay.
When it started, all these allegedly Chinese eggs had turned up. And the guy had bought them all, and there was one missing. The one that Lee had, and he had this strange powder in it which was supposed to give everlasting life or something. That was the original story. I mean, it was rubbish, but and there was a whole drugs plot in it, but which had to be taken out, and which was a shame, really. I'd like to see a director's cut of it, which he never got a chance to do.
To be continued.
I mean, in comedy, there's a lot of comedians with accents that do really well now, and you know, do you think accents is important, or do you think the North or South, which is funniest? Because in the South, there's not really any accents, really, is there? Unless you go into Devon. But up north, there's so many different accents and comedians.
Yes, I mean, there was always that north-south divide. I mean, London used to say London comics didn't work in the north, and northern comics didn't work in the south. But it was untrue, of course. Northern comics did work a lot in the south because they had funny personas and, you know, sometimes funny accents.
Yes.
I think the accent that didn't work down south really was a Geordie. You know, Geordies were very difficult to understand in the south of England. There was only one who really did well on tour, and that was Bobby Thompson.
Okay.
Who was an old, broad Geordie comic. I mean, he also found it difficult to work in London. When he did work in London, of course, he was working to Geordies who would all go and see him.
Right.
You know, he would do it. It was a good comic, though. He was a good comic. He was a little funny bones comic. He looked very weird. He sort of had one eye. Did you ever see him?
No.
Well, before you started. They used to call him the Little Waster. And he worked on television. He had a huge wife. She was huge. He was tiny little fella, like 4'8".
Really?
Yes. So the two of them looked very funny. That was his real life wife.
I suppose they looked like a ventriloquist act when they went to dinner.
Yeah, that's right. But he used to do these lines. He used to say, "Oh, lass, she rolled over me in bed last night and I went to the mattress like chips."
And when you put the accent in there, it really works, and you can, it's funnier, isn't it? With an accent, it's nice that. And I suppose with the exception of...
the accent is used to advantage. You see, Ken Dodd had an accent. He had a Liverpool accent.
Yes.
But he wasn't broad Liverpool.
Yeah, I always forgot that, you know.
Accent,
Yeah, I always forgot that. Not that he was from Liverpool, but he didn't have a strong Liverpudlian accent,
you would never
did he?
know.
No.
You know, I mean, you knew he was from Liverpool, obviously. You know.
Yeah.
Scouse comic, but he was. I don't think he was a Scouse comic. You know,
No.
He was a comic from Liverpool.
Yeah, not so much like John Bishop. I mean, he's very very Scouse comic.
Which was a Scouse comic, yeah.
Yes. And I suppose up in Newcastle, Sarah Millican has done the best out of anyone, really.
That's right.
And she talks slower for us, I think, which works.
She does look a bit slower, yes.
You turned yourself to acting quite a lot, didn't you? And quite serious acting. You went into Heartbeat, Casualty. You've done a lot of dramas and stuff on television and a couple of movies. So do you miss comedy when you're doing the drama?
No, I think all those things that you do as a spur from what you originally intended to do, they're just a spur off. They're just a different type of,
work
of entertainment.
You've got an equal passion for both.
Yeah, and they all have I think they all need their own niche. In other words, I mean, acting doesn't bear any relation to comedy. I mean, straight acting doesn't. You've got to just try and be the character somehow.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of it is down to having watched people, and I wasn't trained as an actor, but to and interpret the writing. If the writing requires comedy in it, it's written as in a comedy vein,
yes,
then that's how you need to do it. But if it's written as a character, then you just do it, as virtually as yourself. Which is all you can do, really. But but you have to put yourself into whatever you do, you know. It's just a slightly different technique.
Of course. Yeah, that's nice. And you, comedy songs as well. You've got a few songs out. And so
Well, that recording all came by the by. I mean, these things, you just sort of drift into them. Goodness, they do. Like we all sort of drift into what we do, particularly in the entertainment world. I mean, I drifted into saying I was doing a TV program with Des O'Connor in the late 60s or mid 60s. Must have been about 1966. And Ronnie Hilton was on it. And Ronnie's manager turned up on the Saturday morning at the rehearsal. And Ronnie said to him, "This fella's got a funny voice. He'd be funny on record." And his manager, who was also his recording manager, said, "Have you got any material?" And I said, "Well, somebody's written me a Christmas song." And so he said, "Well, let's go in and do it." I said, "But it's November." I said, "Is it not too late for Christmas?" He said, "It's never too late if the product is right." And I went. It was a Saturday, so we did the cheap program. And he said, Can you come up on Wednesday?" Living in Blackpool then. "Can you come to town on Wednesday and we'll go and put this down and put the tracks down?" And he did. And I went and did it, and it was called Santa Face is Bringing Me a Budgie. And on the B-side was Lionel Bart's Give Us a Kiss for Christmas. But there were both songs I could do with a lisp. You know, Give Us a Kiss for Christmas.
Okay, was that always a necessity? They always request that you did the lisp?
Well, for those records, yes. And I did.
Okay.
Then I started to do children's records.
Yeah.
I did quite a lot of records for kids because the kids caught on with the gimmick, you know, and they would go around splashing over one another. I used to get parents saying, "Will you stop my son talking like you?" And stuff.
Is that the Ballad of Samuel Tweet? Is that one of them?
Well, Samuel Tweet, we had to give him a name, the fellow with the hat on, and that's where Samuel Tweet came from.
Yeah.
You had to give the character with the hat a name, and that's how Samuel Tweet started.
Is it the Ballad of Samuel Tweet? Is that one of the songs?
Yeah, well, that was for the series.
Okay.
The Small World of Samuel Tweet in '74.
Oh, nice.
You wouldn't remember those two.
No, I was 75. I was born. Yeah.
That's right. No, you
missed
wouldn't
it.
No, it was a series for children about a guy who ran a pet shop, and he was called Samuel Tweet, and he was the character with the hat.
Oh, that's nice.
And there was a title song written for it called The Ballad of Samuel Tweet. "My name is Samuel Tweet from the pet shop down the street. My friends all call me Sam, suppose they take me as I am." And it was lovely. It had a sort of an oboe at the end of it when he sang the chorus was, "I'd have elephants, monkeys, goats and bears and crocodiles everywhere, gorillas with great big..." And just, I'd have to sing the song to remember the words. But I'll tell you a funny story that happened. That was the signature tune for it, right?
Okay.
And that was in 1974. So last December, I took Lisa, my lovely Lisa, to see a musical in London called Come From Away. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh, it's wonderful, wonderful musical. About 9/11. Wonderful, wonderful. Anyway, we'd gone into this restaurant. It was in Charing Cross Road, the theatre, the Phoenix. I'd gone into this restaurant, and I'd gone over the road to pick the tickets up from the theatre, and I'd gone to the wrong entrance. Box office had closed, and now he had to pick the tickets up from the box office round at the theatre. And there was a fella selling the big issue. Huge Jamaican gentleman.
Yeah.
And he's saying, "You've got to go around the corner, mate. You're not going to get in there now." And as I walked past him, he said to me, "My name is Samuel Tweet."
No, really?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And we stood in the middle of Charing Cross Road, him with a pile of big issues, and both of us singing, "My name is Samuel Tweet" from the picture.
Oh, bless.
Oh, he said, "A great programme, man, great."
That's lovely. How lovely is that?
Yeah, lovely story.
What a great memory. And did you sell fish in that pet shop as well? Because you've got the Ballad of Harry Ramsden's in here as well.
Oh no, that was that was from a summer show. That was from a pantomime I did in Bradford.
Was it? Wow.
I was doing this panto in Bradford with Barbara Windsor. It must have been about 1977, possibly, yes. We're doing this panto, and Harry Ramsden's was not very far away, and they were very kind. As a company, Harry Ramsden's Fish and Chip Shop, to members of our company, and they say, if you want to come in, you can have complimentary fish and chips from the theatre. It was a sort of a nice thing, you know.
Yeah, I'll try that. We got one in Eastbourne.
Yeah, it was lovely. a few of the cast went to this Christmas party, and I knew, like you would, they weren't going to get you up, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right? You know, sing for your supper. So I got the MD in the pit, Will Fife. I said to him, can you I've got this little tune going round in my head. He goes like this: we're all going to Harry Ramsden's for our teas. We're all going to Harry Ramsden's, and we're having mushy peas. Right?
I like that.
Just a little 4-bar jingle. He wrote it down. We get to the gig. Sure enough, would you like to say a few words, Freddie? Yeah, okay. I get up and I said, look, I've written a song, and I want you all to join in, because they're all the employees from Harry Ramsden's, right? I mean, it's a huge shop it was. I think they had like 800 seats. It was huge.
Oh, wow.
And, the biggest. I mean, it was huge. And people would go out for trips, and they had a souvenir shop and everything. Oh, it was a fabulous fish and chip shop. Anyway, so I do this thing, and I get them all to join in and sing with me. And afterwards we're having a drink and a dance and whatever, a disco or whatever. And the managing director came over to me and he said, that's quite cute, that jingle, isn't it? Do you think you could make it into a song? I said, oh, well. And of course Barbara Winder said, you know what Barbara's like? She said, yeah. Yeah, it's very good, old Freddie, make any one song for you. So, and that's what happened. I finished up writing a verse to it and a chorus, and I wanted somebody like Ronnie Hilton to do it. I said, I will make you a demo, right? If you pay for a demo, it'll cost you 300 quid, and then you'll know whether you like it or not. So I made the demo, local studio in Huddersfield, made a little demo. Will Fife came over, brought the trio out, the band, and we made a little demo, and they loved it. So we made a proper record, and we had a big brass band on it, and Halley Orchestra strings, and all the company did sang on it.
Did they?
We had the best last night party out of the fee than you've ever seen.
Yeah, how sweet is that? That's lovely. I hope they've looked after you since with free fish and chip. I worked on a cruise ship with Mike Craig, who was great at telling stories about the variety and comedians, and I've got some of his books as well. And you do a talk now, don't you? Do you do a talk on variety, or is it on your career, Freddie?
Well, it's called Stagecraft. Yeah, I just talk about, we said, about the fact that turns these days don't get the chance to work together, and where you're going to learn how to do, the instinctive things that we learned in variety on stage.
Yes.
When you did it twice nightly for a week, you get a chance to hone the material.
Yes.
To find out whether it works. I mean, what works one night will maybe not work another night. So you sort of generalise with your act, and you get the best bits that work all the time well. And that's what I talk about mainly. And just smartening up one's appearance.
Yes.
It's a general thing. And remember that people are watching you.
Yes. You never know who's standing there, do you?
And you shouldn't run about the stage all over the time, because you're causing your own distraction, Make them watch you. Make them look at you. Find the best place to be, which is usually in the centre.
Yes. It's brilliant.
That's really what I talk
It's great advice. Oh, bless you. And your book is brilliant. And I'll do a couple of plugs on your book on social media. It's a great read. So we all want to empty our garages of books, don't we? So yeah, it's a brilliant story. Really is, Freddie. I love working with you. Well, we've only done it a few times in some Dougie Chapman's, haven't we?
Yeah, dear Dougie, bless him. I do miss him, actually.
Yeah.
I miss our chats on the phone. We talk for bloody hours on the phone.
Oh, I know.
I knew him for over 60 years,
Yeah.
And he said, what are you going to pay me, Doug? He said, I don't want to insult you. He used to say. I said, well, you won't insult me. How much have you got? And he told me, and I said, well, you've got to do a bit better now, haven't you? So I'm keeping busy as much as I can.
You got to keep your brain working, yeah. No, bless you, and thanks for those lines. I'll try them next week. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, not at all. I'll jot them down, and you've got them in front of you.
That's very kind.
I'm interested to know that you realise how controlling you are. It makes me smile, actually, just of the doll saying that to you.
Yeah, I can imagine Arthur Worsley doing it with Charlie Brown.
Well,
Yes,
he would.
Yeah, because Charlie would have said it.
I don't remember seeing Arthur work live.
Yeah.
Not only was he very funny, he was just such a lovely guy. He was a sweetheart of a man. Do you know his son?
I know Michael. Yeah, I've met Michael a few times. I did get
his son and his wife were lovely people. Lived in Blackpool, of course. Does his son still live in Blackpool?
Yes, I went to the house. I met Audrey. She'd done us. Michael cooked us lunch. Me and Nina went there, and because Audrey was a dancer, she was in her late 80s when we went, and she was talking to Nina, and I was talking to Michael, and I was interviewing him about his dad for my book, and I want to try and get it out next year. But it's I've got a few quotes from you in it over the years. Bless you. So it's. I do a lot on Peter Pullon as well, you know, so...
Absolutely. Are you finding Eastbourne handy for work?
I've worked all the theatres here and some of the clubs, but there's nowhere else to work, really. I've done it all, do you know what I mean? So I've been here 20 years this year. And
do you find it good for travelling, though?
No, not really. I mean, if you're working in Kent or Sussex, that's great, but I hardly really get work here. I'm always going down to Devon, Cornwall, or up in... London and beyond, you know, and Norfolk. I do a lot of work in Norfolk, so there is a possibility of moving to Norfolk at one point. So we might do that in the future.
See, somebody said to me that the Lincolnshire area is quite nice.
Yes.
Between Lincoln and Newark.
Skegness and all that, yeah.
Because it's sort of central on the country. I mean, I live where I live now, in Yorkshire, because it is the middle of the country.
Yes.
The reason I moved here from Scotland was because I had an agent in Leeds.
Right.
But I found it, it's an hour and a half to Blackpool. It's an hour to Scarborough. I don't know where it's to Skegness. Everything's 25 hours in Skegness, isn't it?
Yes.
Wherever you are. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're only in Louth, it's 25 hours.
Yeah, well, my next gig was going to be Skegness, but they pulled it since then because I think Butlins is not happening now. But I was I got a 6-hour drive to Skegness. And if I get there and it rains, then I'm not going on. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it always rains when I go there as well. Oh, well.
It always rains in Skegness.
That could be a new song.
That's right. It always rains in Skeggy. It deserves to rain in Skegness. Bring me anytime, Steve.
Thank you. Take care. Lots of love. Have a good day.
God bless. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Eyes and Steve.
Thank you to Freddie Davies, a true legend in variety. To see more of Freddie, you can rent Funny Bones, starring him and Lee Evans, Oliver Platt, Jerry Lewis, George Carl, on Amazon Prime. And his book is a must-read also titled Funny Bones, Foreword by Ken Dodd. You can find this and personalised video messages, signed photos and more on Freddie at www.freddiedavies.com. You can also find him on Facebook. Speaking of Funny Bones, today's comedy quote comes from comedy icon Jerry Lewis. I get paid for what most kids get punished for. And here's another. I don't want to be remembered. I want the nice words when I can hear them. Eyes and Teeth is written, produced and hosted by Steve Hewlett. Vocals provided by Larissa Lola and Nina Hewlett. Special guest vocals by Rich T. Eyes and Teeth music and jingles are produced and performed by Kevin Dean. Thanks for listening. If you are enjoying these podcasts, then please leave a review, which will help spread the word. And if you subscribe, then you will automatically know when the next episode is available. Tune in for another edition of Eyes and Teeth when I'll be catching up with one of my childhood heroes, the wonderful puppeteer, Mr. Ronnie Ledrew, aka Zippy. See you then.